All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really controversial theory, one from a source that predicts the world's only superpower is, believe it or not, on the verge of being defeated in a war with Iran.
So this entire thing really boils down to this one single, pretty startling question. The theory itself comes from a geopolitical analyst our source just calls Professor Sane. And his predictions, well, they're the foundation for everything we're about to unpack.
Okay, so the way the source makes its case is by pointing to what it claims are two predictions that already came true. First, that Donald Trump would be reelected, and second, that a war with Iran would kick off right after. Now, taking those pretty controversial claims as fact, the source then pivots to its main event, the third and by far the most shocking prediction, that America's going to lose this war.
So how on earth could that even happen? Well, according to this analysis, we're not talking about a conventional war, tanks and planes going head-to-head. Nope, this is supposedly the final move in a massive 20-year-long chess game that Iran has been planning, seeing this as the one final conflict to end it all.
So the first part of the plan is pretty clever. Avoid a direct fight at all cost. Instead, the source says, Iran activates this whole network of proxy forces. And these aren't just random groups. We're talking about battle-hardened fighters who have allegedly spent years studying American tactics, ready to act as one big, coordinated front.
Now this is where you start to see the sheer scale of the ambition here. The source claims the goal isn't just winning a battle in the Middle East. We're talking about a strategy designed to bring down the entire American empire and the whole financial system that keeps it running.
And to pull that off, these proxies aren't supposedly aiming for U.S. military bases. Instead, they're going straight for the economic lifelines of America's key allies in the Gulf, countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. They're hitting things like energy facilities, critical shipping lanes, and even their water supplies.
And this slide, wow, it just perfectly shows a huge vulnerability. You see, most of these Gulf nations depend almost entirely on desalination plants for their fresh water. The source paints a really chilling picture. One cheap drone hits one major plant, and a city of 10 million people, like Riyadh, could be completely out of water in just 2 weeks.
All right, let's peel back another layer of this theory. Because this isn't just about a regional war. No, the argument here is that this is a direct attack on America's economic dominance. It's not just about the Gulf, it's about the very foundation of the US dollar itself.
The source flat out calls the American economy a financial Ponzi scheme that completely depends on this cycle. See, Gulf nations sell their oil for dollars, which keeps demand for the dollar high. Then they take all those dollars and pour them right back into the US market, especially into the whole AI boom we're seeing. But if this war messes up their ability to sell oil, that flood of investment money just stops. And when it does, the source alleges the whole system just comes crashing down.
But hang on a second. Why can't the most advanced military on the planet just, shoot all these drones and missiles down? Well, the answer, according to this theory, lies in a really basic, brutal mismatch in cost. It's a textbook case of asymmetric warfare.
Okay, just look at these numbers. Iran is supposedly firing off these simple, mass-produced Shahed drones that cost maybe 50 grand apiece. But to stop just one of them, the US and its allies have to launch a super sophisticated missile that cost over $2 million. That is a 40-to-1 cost disadvantage. You just can't win that math problem.
I mean, you literally cannot win a war of attrition with numbers like that. The source claims this financial bleeding is already forcing the U.S. to just burn through its stockpiles of high-tech missiles, including the ones that were meant to be saved for a potential fight with China.
So this brings us to the biggest question of all, the real head-scratcher. If the U.S. military itself was allegedly warning that this was an unwinnable war of attrition, why in the world would President Trump lead the country right into it?
Well, Professor Sane's analysis basically lays out 3 different reasons, and they get progressively more out there. First, plain old overconfidence. Second, personal, political, and financial gain from allies who wanted this war. And third, the most conspiratorial reason you can imagine, that this is all part of some secret agenda.
And this is where the theory takes a sharp turn into some very strange territory. It suggests that the war isn't actually being driven by politics or oil at all, but by powerful secret societies pulling the strings. The source specifically calls out the Jesuits, a group called the Sabbatanian Frankists, and the Freemasons, claiming they're the ones really controlling things from the shadows.
And this is the ultimate explanation the source gives us. According to this theory, these groups believe that a huge, catastrophic war in the Middle East isn't a tragedy. It's a required step to fulfill an end-times prophecy and create their version of heaven on earth. This spiritual script, not national interest, is presented as the real reason for the war, an agenda so important it would be followed even if it meant America's complete and total ruin.
And so that's where this whole analysis leaves us. It lays out this incredibly detailed case for America's potential downfall, tying together military strategy, economics, and, in the end, a really deep conspiracy. The question it kind of forces you to ask is, are we looking at a chillingly accurate prediction of 21st century warfare, or have we just been taken on a wild ride down a very, very deep conspiracy rabbit hole? That's what it leaves us to ponder.